think he's turning into a Umapalata. Another common move. It's so hard to get out of. You know, it's one of those moves where you're stuck, and if you don't really know how to get out of it, you can get hurt. So for me, I'm not the best grappler in the world. So if I get there, I know how to get out and how to maneuver myself to get back to my strong suits. What I would naturally try to do is roll over. If you notice, the person is going to stop you automatically from rolling over. And this is just one of those positions where it's a stalemate, where it's like, all right, who's going to impose the will to either keep the person down or get out? That shoulder! I noticed he finished him at the end. I'm a strong person. If someone gets me in an Umapalata, I don't see someone finishing me by pressing down so hard it'll pull my shoulder out. I'm speaking for myself. I would give this a 9 out of 10. The jiu-jitsu part here was really well done, I think. Well, I'm a big fan of Michael Jai White. I actually learned a kick from Michael Jai White. He has, what, 7 black belts? So that guy's actually legit. So fighting is like dancing, and it's about rhythm. And right now, these guys are feeling each other's rhythm. Each opponent has the counter for that move. He throws a technique, he blocks, he hit back, he counters, he goes back, and it's just such a beautiful piece to see. Like this, I love. To me, this is fighting. This is getting in the zone. This won't last for long, of course, because eventually someone will break their rhythm. Whether it's fear, whether it's none of my stuff is working, whether it's this person's better than me, or whether them getting clipped. So what we're seeing right now is him getting kind of a cross choke from behind. If his body was more attached to Michael Jai White, it would have been a little stronger, but his upper body's more here, so he's not latched on properly. So that helps Michael Jai White gets out of that move a little easier. I love this whole, my hand is up, I kick you low and I come back high. I do it all the time. I don't do a back fist, I more do a jab, but this is Michael Jai White we're talking about. Faking is one of my best traits to use as I'm competing because it interrupts. I can create that opening, and if I create that opening, then I can exploit my opponent's weakness. And once I get you to react, then I can counter you properly. Now this is what fighting should look like, almost. I think that it's similar to what I do with the prettiness of the art of fighting, the dynamic way of striking, but it is too crisp and pretty. There's not gonna be too many standing in one spot. There's gonna be a lot more movement involved in a real situation. You know, there's gonna be creating more openings, more grabbing the leg, a little bit of dirty boxing-ish to kind of create that mixture of mixed martial arts, but it just looks too clean. The only way I can see something like this working is because of the size difference. So putting that leg up, that opponent is feeling that weight distribution and he just rolls. But it depends how you roll though. And if you roll backwards, then you're rolling out of the move. So it's great for TV, but I wouldn't think a move like this will really work in real life. I would give this a 9 out of 10. It's right there, but it's just not that, it's not gonna be that pretty much. Oh my God. This is so awkward. Now I gotta judge myself. Way to go, guys. Good job. Yeah, this was a cool scene, man. I got to work with one of the best. But I think from what I've learned from acting is that a lot of times when you throw those punches that way, it's not just straight to your face. Depending on the camera angle, it's gonna look very good for TV. But for the untrained eye, it's like, wow. But for the rest of the OG, it's like, what? Stance is everything. My stance is another line of my defense. You know, am I open enough where I can protect the 4 vulnerable areas, such as like my head, my neck, my solar plex, and my groin. And it makes a straight line. That 45-degree angle most of the time you see is protecting that. Right now, we're kind of feeling each other's rhythm. And I love this part right here. Well, not when I died, but Oh. Went out like a G. I mean, you would have to be very accurate to kick someone like that because your kicks are naturally heavier than your arms. Plus, my chin is a little closer, it's protecting that. But for this scene, you know, he didn't kick me in the neck. We actually took his shoe and someone put their fist and put it at my neck to make it look like a kick. Movies, man, movies. All right, I gotta keep it real with myself. Again, it goes back to that too clean, right? If it's gonna be more scuffle, like the part where he grabbed me and, you know, I was throwing some knees, it's gonna be a little more realistic like that. I'm gonna give myself a 9 out of 10. Using the environment in close quarters like that, just tossing each other, bouncing off of it. I feel like this is a real fight. When someone grabs your throat, what a lot of people don't realize that you're stronger up here, but as you go down, you're weaker. So your wrist is naturally weak. So anything that involves me putting pressure on this will alleviate that pressure. Instinctively grabbing something to hit that person, I feel that works very well. Using the plates, using the curtains, using anything they can find. So I rated 10 out of 10 because it's the closest thing to a realistic fight on the street or in a house.
Jessie's got the timing down. Now can she control right here?
This, red flags. You don't want to turn away, of course. When you turn away, you're giving up your back and you get rear naked choke. Just like we saw from the other cartoon, you want your legs wrapped around the person. So what I'm supposed to do is push my hips back, bring my knee in, and then try to wrap my leg around the person. But she has one knee up, which means it's hard for the person to cross over. So that's a natural defense.
Side control position, looking to get to the mount. She's there! She's there! Full mount.
So if you're in that position, you never want to step over. Remember what I said about grappling being like this? If she steps over, that creates space. And if anyone sees that on the bottom, they're gonna push and get their leg wrapped. You want to slide your knee across their stomach like this. So my knee is going to be crossing over to get the mount position. It's a lot easier for the person on top to cover the person on the bottom mouth. The person on top have more ways to move their head than the person on the bottom. But what I think she's trying to do is posture her up. If I can push you away a little bit, then I can create space, but this is risky because the moment I do that, I set myself up for an arm bar.
Now pouring it off. She hops on the back, standing. This rear naked is in. He has it.
You get caught here, it's a finish. You're going night-night. This is, if not the hardest thing to get out of. What happened is when you put a rear naked choke in, think of it like a snake, you kind of snake around the neck. If I can get the crease of this part of my arm right in the middle here, then I'm locked in. What I like to do when I put this through, I grab my own shoulder like this. Now I'm locked in. I think Hallie did a great job. She snuck her arm in and she got the other arm in like this, and all she had to do was squeeze, and basically you're cutting off the blood circulation to the head. You know, I think Halle Berry did such a great job in performing this MMA. There was some small spatial stuff, but I don't think it's too much of a big deal. I'm gonna probably give it like an 8 out of 10. I think my favorite scene would be Black Widow. If you take away the octagon and you take away all the rules and stuff, a real scuffle would be like that, where they're using the entire environment. That is the closest thing that I've seen to anything being real from a mixed martial arts perspective. So, Black Widow. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, I'm sure you like that one too.
It scrambled down the tree, and that type of speed is real. They can run up to 25 miles an hour. Hey y'all, I'm Dr. Raywyn Grant. I'm a wildlife ecologist, and I've been studying bears for 13 years. Today we're going to be looking at bear attacks in movies and on TV and judging how real they are. So already in this clip, I see the very like cinematic trope of a giant brown bear standing up on its hind legs and like roaring at a person. Honestly, in real life, bears are very quiet. They really don't do a lot of growling. They don't do a lot of roaring. But if there's a territory dispute, two big male alpha bears might actually stand up on their hind legs and roar at each other and fight. But if there's a big bear and a small person, that bear isn't usually going to go through all that trouble. You saw that big swipe of the ground. That's something that brown bears and black bears do. In fact, I have experienced a bear do a bluff charge on me, and it is frightening and terrifying, but really they're just trying to freak you out so that you back up and walk away and they don't actually have to attack you. This is great for TV, but it's not biologically accurate. This bear, even though it looks like it could be 1,000 pounds, it could scale that wall no problem. Those claws could dig into the wood and it could climb up all the way and then terrorize all those people that are watching. I'd give it a 7 out of 10. I really wish the bear had climbed up at the end. Let me make it clear, that is what you don't do. Even if it looks like you might be attacked by a bear, you never run. It's because humans cannot outrun bears. When humans run, it signals to the predator that you're prey. Like that's what a little deer would do or a little rabbit would do. But when we stand still, that's so different than what prey would do that they get the message. No way. Bears, as big and burly as they are, can also like get into teeny tiny small spaces. I mean, I've seen bears like squeeze themselves into anything they want. So again, if it wanted to hurt him, it would. This is interesting. So we see that they made a ring of fire, and that's their tactic of protecting themselves. First, no one should ever do this in the wilderness, okay? It will start a forest fire. But two, there really is something to this, and that's that most wild animals are afraid of fires. It's just something that they haven't experienced, right? They can't make fire themselves. So as much as I don't want anyone to ever use this tactic, I believe it would be effective to keep you safe.
How are we going to lure him?
Blood!
Did you see him? Blood! That's not gonna work. Okay, so like bears are driven by hunger. Blood does not necessarily signal this is something to eat, right? A bear wants to smell something delicious. It wants to smell honey. It wants to smell rotting meat. I think they're getting this from the shark thing. Like sharks are drawn to blood. It's not the same with bears. So this is actually something that we use in real life. If we want to lure a bear to something, maybe we set up a little trail cam and we want to get information on the individual bear, we'll put out what we call a scent rag. And so it looks just like that, like a little piece of cloth, and we'll put some kind of scent on it. We could literally use like vanilla extract. They'll come right to that rag to see what it is.
Run, run!
Is it realistic that that bear might come looking for you again because you are still in its territory and haven't left? Yes. However, is it realistic that a bear is going to attack over and over when there's 2 or more people? No. So bear attacks happen usually when there's just one person by themselves. If you have 2 or more, it rarely happens, which is another way that people can be safe when they recreate in nature. It did look real, but like the probability of something like this actually taking place, like I'm gonna give this a 5 out of 10. The first shot we see of the bear is of its claws, right? Those are real claws. They did a great job modeling that. It looks like a real animal. And then the other thing we see is the bear like sniffing, right? Meh. Bear's sense of smell is so precise and can go across such a long distance that they're not gonna be sniffing around for a person when they're literally like 2 feet from them.
Bears can't climb trees.
Of course I can!
This little kid just said, we're safe because bears can't climb trees, right? Already I'm like, oh no, like they're doomed. Bears are the best tree climbers.
Henry, move!
Go higher!
He's kicking downward with his leg. If you ever find yourself like above a bear on a tree, you should do that. But climbing higher, no. There's a phrase out there when it comes to bear attacks. If it's black, fight back. If it's brown, lay down. And it's important to note that this is for bear attacks. This is not for bear encounters. Even if a bear is near you, even if it's approaching you rapidly, that's still not an attack until it's actually like physically touching you. That is a really important difference. Because if a bear is not attacking you, that's when you back away slowly, you make yourself look big. If it is attacking you, the kid did it right, but the whole time, also try to get out of there. It scrambled down the tree, and that type of speed is real. So the bear first slowly went up to get the boy. Of course they can do that, but the way it practically leapt onto the second tree and scaled it in a second, that's really when a bear wants something. I mean, they can run up to 25 miles an hour. Also, it should be said that bears don't do drugs. It is totally hypothetical what a bear would do if it was on tons and tons of cocaine. But this movie is loosely based off of a true story. But there was a bear in the 80s, I believe it was 1985, that was found dead after ingesting a big amount of cocaine that was dropped from an airplane. But in general, overdoses can kill animals just like they can kill people, and that's what happened to the real cocaine bear. The only thing that I saw in this clip that wasn't so accurate is that they're really not that interested in attacking people, right? Especially black bears. Black bears are the least predatory of all the bear species. They mostly have a vegetarian diet. They love their fruit. They love their nuts. Another thing people should know is that bears do not eat people. Sometimes it's happened, really, really rarely, but they do not prey on humans. If a bear is attacking someone, it's really because they perceive that person as a threat. I would give it a 6 out of 10. I can't imagine a bear ever leaving one person to go attack another person for drugs. Oh, that's real. Right behind him comes what's gotta be Mama Bear. The female bear raises her cubs, and she dedicates her life to keeping them safe. This guy was technically just standing there, but because he was between the bear and her cub, she sees that as a threat and she ran right through him. So we often tell people who are recreating in the wilderness, do not physically come between a female bear and her cub. Even if you notice a bear cub on its own and you do not see the mama, get away from there immediately. You are in danger, okay? They lose their mind and they just attack. So it's actually really, really accurate the way that they showed the attack. The way that the bear uses her teeth the most, she does a little bit of paw stuff. She uses those parts of her the most because they're the most effective. And again, she's not trying to get a bite to eat, right? If she wanted to eat him, she would use her claws to tear him apart. But instead, she just wants to have those fatal bites to keep her cubs safe. But the biggest myth that the media shows about bears is that they're always on the attack. In some of the national parks that have bears, take Yellowstone National Park, your chances of a bear attack are something like 1 in 2 million. So truly, bears are peaceful, they're docile. And with that said, don't bother them, don't frustrate them, and don't trigger them, because if you do, you might be in trouble. At this exact spot, I wish the character knew to play dead, because this is a brown bear, sometimes called grizzly bears, and with that species, it's really important to play dead, because if he just played dead, right there, it's more likely that she would like nudge him a little bit more just to make sure and then walk away. But he's like still making a little bit of noise, and it's telling her like, nope, he's still alive, he could still be a threat. This is giving me anxiety. He shot her, and then she just attacked more because she's like, see, I was right. It just tried to hurt me. I'm just gonna like kill it and rip it to pieces now. So I can understand having a weapon and wanting to like kill it and fight back for your life. But again, you're safer playing dead until he can no longer hear or see the bear or her cub. Honestly, I'd give this one a 10 out of 10. It's, believe it or not, a CGI bear, but they really got it right.
How did you get up there?
I don't know.
And of course, like, pandas don't really do the splits, but they are flexible. All the little YouTube videos you see of like pandas in captivity rolling around and being cute, they really do have very flexible bodies, although they're chubby and fat.
I now see that the way to get through to you is with this.
Oh, great.
Realistic that they would want to eat a lot of food, but would they eat delicious Chinese pork buns? I don't think so. However, a lot of people don't realize that pandas, although they're vegetarians and some might think they're herbivores, they're actually still carnivores. Pandas have the gut microbiome to digest meat, meaning they have the bacterial community in their bodies to break down meat and synthesize it for energy. So that means that it's possible that ancient pandas were carnivores and ate meat all the time, and probably if they wanted to, they still could. So, you know, this panda is learning martial arts, which is atypical for wild pandas. But believe it or not, pandas can fight. Pandas have claws and they have fangs, long fangs that could rip through tissue really easily. So they have the physical structure to be very, very aggressive and violent if they want to. I love this movie, but I have to give it a 1 out of 10. I'm always happy to see polar bears. They're awesome. They are not only the largest of all 8 bear species, they're also the largest carnivore on the planet, and they are very aggressive. So to have a very violent interaction between 2 alpha male polar bears is realistic. We're not gonna have like an audience of other polar bears. Maybe if there's like a big common food source, they would congregate together. Other than that, they're not really cooperating like that. The other thing that we wouldn't really see in a polar bear fight is the running and slamming together. Usually when they're fighting, they approach each other slowly, they'll do all the bluff charges to each other, and then they'll get up on their hind legs and start fighting, but they won't kind of knock each other back and then run at each other together again. They don't eat people, they don't eat each other, but they're more likely to be extremely aggressive. Polar bears are what we call obligate carnivores, right? So that means they just want to hunt and kill and eat. And because of that, it impacts their behaviors. They often say, like, if it's white, good night. It means that if you are in an attack with a polar bear, it's not looking good. As well done as the art was, I would give it like a 2 out of 10.
Bear fights!
I think it goes without saying that this is like extremely exaggerated. The bear was like slapping back, and that was actually kind of realistic. In fact, like, it doesn't take a lot of energy for them to like slap you across the face. But punching a bear in the face is just a really great way to irritate them and to get them to really hurt you.
Hey, Ron! I'm riding a furry tractor!
You can't ride a bear. It's kind of worth explaining that over the years, bears have been used in like circuses and entertainment capacity. Don't train wild animals. There's a lot of ethics around this. Probably bear riding has been a thing. But these days, you're not really going to find it anywhere. I would give it, again, like a 3 out of 10. Oh, that's something that every camper is worried about. If they're camping in a place where bears could be, bears will smell something good in your tent and will come looking for it. So it looks like she just uncapped her bear spray. Really glad to see that. Bear spray is something that I have on me at all times whenever I'm in the wilderness. It can save your life. This is where this woman went wrong. Bear spray is completely 100% ineffective when you're in close proximity with the bear. It's just gonna aggravate it and make it attack you. You use it when there's a bear in the distance. Bear spray is pepper spray, but it's not the same kind of pepper spray that we use to keep ourselves safe. It is extremely powerful and it shoots at a long distance. So if you sprayed bear spray in your tent, you would not be able to breathe. You wouldn't be able to see, like you would be incapacitated. You have to do it in the open and then you have to get yourself out of there. So what they should have done is at the beginning of the clip, unzip the tent, spray the bear spray, zip it back up, and wait a few minutes and see what happens. That one was intense. It would have to have so many interactions with humans that it learns a behavior to become a killer, like a deliberate predator of humans. Also, the bear spray situation could have saved them way before the attack actually happened. I wish they had just deployed the bear spray the right way. I wanted to give it like a 9 out of 10 because I was like, camping, black bear, fear, like that all makes sense. But then in terms of how aggressive and how like murderous that bear was, I want to give it like a 4 out of 10. Oh my God, what is that? Kind of has like the humps and lumps of a bear-ish. We can see like it has this extended kind of snout, almost like a horse head, and then like a more flat head. Black bear will either have like the extended snout, but then like a proper hump for a head, or a brown bear or grizzly bear has more of like the flattened face and like a much rounder head. It's all over the place. One of the things that I'm also noticing is that it looks like there's places where it's like missing fur and just has raw skin. And believe it or not, this is actually kind of accurate because there are times when bears can be very susceptible to mange, the same mange that dogs can get. So it's possible that like a mangy bear influenced this animal here. Okay, I'm gonna give it a 1 out of 10. Like that wasn't even a real animal. My favorite bear show is a show that I've actually been in, and I don't think it's fair to really toot my own horn right here. So I will say that my second favorite bear show was Yogi Bear. And it was mostly about this bear named Yogi who lived in a national park and would steal people's picnic baskets, but it's like kind of realistic, right? Like bears are in a lot of America's national parks, and they love our food. That's something that humans and bears have in common. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, why not click on the video above?
Don't move. Can't see us if we don't move.
If you sit still, it's not going to see you. Complete joke. Supposedly it becomes down to the T-Rex's brain shape is similar to that of frogs, and frogs can only see movement. Frogs can't only see movement, otherwise they wouldn't be able to function. Hi, I'm Dr. Dave Hone. I'm a paleontologist at Queen Mary University of London. I'm an expert on dinosaur behaviour and ecology. Today we're going to be looking at some dinosaur and pterosaur clips from movies and TV and judge how real they are.
Put 12 amps in these animals, they're never gonna trust me again.
He's giving them supposedly the stop signal, but they're still coming for him. If you tell a dog to stop, it should stop pretty much instantly. If it keeps coming and it keeps growling, it's not responding to that signal. So Velociraptor's tiny. It would be waist high to him standing up. So these are grossly exaggerated in terms of their size. We now know they're fully feathered. They would be as feathered as modern birds. These things should be totally covered in feathers. Their heads are really big and blocky. Velociraptor's got a really long, narrow skull. So think kind of, Doberman-shaped head, which these really don't have.
Back up.
The noises are a bit mixed. They're using various different things, so I think there's geese in there and some alligator hisses. They didn't have super complicated voice boxes like modern birds do, so they're probably not making really complicated trills and whistles and things like that. Crocodiles are the nearest living relatives to dinosaurs, apart from birds, which really are dinosaurs, and they have actually quite a range of calls and growls, and there's no reason to think they wouldn't sound something like that. They're much heavier than you, they're much stronger than you, they're much faster than you, they can jump far higher than you can. They don't seem to be able to climb, oddly, when we think in reality they probably could by climbing up a tree. That's probably quite a good strategy if you can get up the tree fast enough before they can get to you. They're basically just going up and down, like those really old movies of people trying to build aeroplanes in like 1910, and the wings just flap up and down, and the whole machine just bobbles and then falls apart. And if you do that, you push air down to go up, and then you immediately push air up and go down, and all you'll do is bob around on space. That's how they're trying to fly. You need to fold the wing for the upstroke, and then open it up for the downstroke. She just grabbed someone and picked them up. Pterosaurs' feet are built just like ours. They have a really big, long, flat bit of the main part of the foot and then some very small toes at the edge. And yeah, if you've tried picking a pen up with your toes, it's really quite hard. And this is a, trope from dinosaur films. There's nothing to grip with. Your next problem is a pteranodon of about that size weighs 30, 40 kilos, and it's lifting up a human who's 60, 70. So you wouldn't be able to grab anyone. This bit's nice. We don't know if pterosaurs could dive. It's certainly possible that they could. Pelicans are famous for doing this sort of thing. It's really motoring. Like penguins don't move that quick underwater. The mosasaur model's really nice. It's way too big, like it's about double the size that it should be. I mean, certainly 10, 12 meters. This thing's like 20 plus. But one thing you can just see there, which is really nice, is the palatal teeth. They don't just have teeth around the edge of the mouth, they actually have more teeth fixed into the roof of the mouth, and you can see them there. They'd eat pterosaurs, they'd eat fish, they'd eat sharks, they'd eat other marine reptiles, they'd eat turtles, all of this kind of stuff. For the dinosaurs, about a 5. The mosasaur's seriously like an 8 or a 9, apart from just being way too big.
One herd had only a single baby.
That's about the right shape for a dinosaur egg. They're not classically hen-shaped with a really big bulge. They're actually more elongate and oval, so they got that right.
Their last hope for the future.
That's a slight worry already, where they say they had one baby and that's their hope for the future. I don't know how you're going to keep a herd going with one. We have dinosaur nests with adults on them and embryos in the eggs that match the adults on the nest. 40, 50 eggs is pretty normal. I don't think we have any sauropod embryos, so we don't have any immediately post-hatching animals. It would have a bit of a longer neck and a bit of a longer tail than this, but it is really nice that it's not just an adult made smaller. All the babies don't just look like the adults, they look like juvenile versions. They've got those classic baby things, which is not just true of humans and things like puppies. Relatively big eyes and a relatively big head and relatively big feet. This is really, really normal. When we find eggs, they're often broken like this in the end. They shatter into lots and lots of little pieces. Until recently, we only had dinosaur eggs that were relatively hard and bird-like, and we've now started finding some that were more reptile-like, which probably explains why we hadn't found them before, because they're rather more fragile and so don't preserve very well.
He knew them by sight, by scent, and by their love. He knew they would be together, always.
We do have herds of sauropods. It's perfectly reasonable that juveniles would hang around the whole time, but we also don't know. We see cohort separation in others, so in other words, the babies all hatch, they grow to a certain size, and then they'll go off on their own. Dinosaurs are part of a group called archosaurs, which includes modern birds, which are dinosaurs, and crocodiles. Basically, almost all of them exhibit what we call both pre- and post-hatching parental care. So yeah, they would recognize their parent, they would follow them around, and the parent would look after them. They're probably going to separate off at some point, or at least in certain cases we see that. We find groups of dinosaurs all of one age, and then groups of one species, and then another group, and then another group, and another group. Oh, like an 8. It's really good. Series, they call this an aceraptor, but as far as I know, it's made up. It's really nice that the crest itself is brightly coloured. It's a display structure. That's the one bit that it's trying to show off with. That should be the colourful bit, not the rest of it. There are dinosaurs with attacking tails. We've got things like ankylosaurs with their armored dinosaurs, their famous tail clubs, stegosaurs with their spikes on the end of the tail. So Stegosaurus, it would be doing some kind of cutting action rather than an impaling or crushing one, because it's got a big series of serrated cutting edges on the end of it. This super long, thin whiplash tail, and it's been suggested that that would be very nasty if it hit something. I think the bones would shatter if it did. It's an impact. It's like being slapped with something. It's not cutting you because there's no edge there. It's a circular cross-section of some muscle around bone. It's not going to cut you in half. And so you're going to run up to something and then stop and turn around and hit it with your tail. This is not a good way of catching something. And if it's running away, if you're trying to run after it and then stop and turn around and hit it with your tail, how would it ever evolve? 6, 5, 5.
Oh, nice boy. Oh, nice boy. Nice, Thomas.
This is tiny. They're big animals, 2.5+ meters tall to the top of the head. It'll be at the ceiling of the room we're in. Now the crests are really good. They come up and over in this arc, but you can't quite see it now, but there's also this little spike that extends off the rear. This is what you'd expect from an animal that hadn't encountered people before. This is an animal in a zoo with keepers. It has encountered people before. There's no reason to think that it had that whatsoever. It's got a big display feature on its head. Why has it got another one? This is copied off a thing called the frilled lizard in Australia, which absolutely does have this big fan that it puffs out. This is it spitting what's supposed to be some kind of venom at him. I believe it's just supposed to be kind of toxic saliva. There are lots of reptiles that have a pretty toxic saliva in addition to like specialized venom in the way that we see in snakes. But that looks like goo. That's horrible stuff. It's not going to kill you instantly. Toxins take time to work. You want to get it into the system. That's why you want to bite if you're venomous, and it's not doing that. They apparently had to string a guitar string under the dashboard of the car, and they were plinking it, and that's what makes the little ripples in the thing. Big animals obviously are heavy, but they don't tend to shake things very much. Elephants are famous for moving around very quietly. We walk in environments that are very hard that we have built. Rock doesn't tend to vibrate like that, and soils of all different kinds give. So big animals don't leave earth-shaking footsteps. If the T-Rex was running down the road, yeah, I'd expect that, but it walking around still in its enclosure, it's not going to be shaking the ground. It looks like a T-Rex gone wrong. Its head shape's weird. It's kind of got a white of the eye, which of course animals don't usually have, and it looks like it's got 3 fingers, whereas if it's supposed to be a Tyrannosaur, or at least a T-Rex, it should only have 2.
Don't move. You can't see us if we don't move.
If you sit still, it's not going to see you. Complete joke. Supposedly it becomes down to the T-Rex's brain shape is similar to that of frogs, and frogs can only see movement. Frogs can't only see movement, otherwise they wouldn't be able to function. What they're very good at is seeing things that move, which is a different thing entirely. Frogs can absolutely see things that don't move. T-Rex doesn't have the brain of a frog, and therefore if you combine those two, it almost certainly could see. On top of that, T-Rex has arguably the biggest eyeball of any terrestrial animal of all time. The idea that it had poor eyesight is beyond a myth. It's the absolute opposite. It's arguably the best eyesight of any terrestrial animal of all time. The bit where they wave the flare and throw it, I'm absolutely sure it would be very interested in that, and if it sees that flying over, it's going to be more interested in that than you standing still. But just holding the kids going, don't move, yeah, that gets you eaten. But it's not terrible, it's just a bit clunky. Traveling in a group like this, pretty much not, unless something is driving it like a drought. And we absolutely have fossil beds where the evidence from the geology suggests that there had been a massive drought followed by a massive flood, and yet pretty much every dinosaur in the environment is preserved together because this was probably the last remaining bit of water. That draws every animal in. Carnosaurus is part of this really weird group called Abelisaurs. You can see these tiny, tiny, tiny little mitteny hands. Everyone jokes about T-Rex and its tiny hands. It's got nothing on the Abelisaurs. The little armor spikes down the side, maybe. Sometimes you do get thick scales like that, but the jaw shape is absolutely spot on. This is the absolute cliched behavior of every predator in every documentary and movie ever. Why attack someone when you can stop, roar at them first to scare them off, and then run after them? Lions don't sneak up behind buffalo, roar, and then attack. Facing them down. Some animals do this. This is how elephants respond to lions. This is how buffalo respond to lions. It's certainly been hypothesized that a bunch of dinosaurs did this. You can see he's got these kind of spiky thumbs, which have been suggested to be used to fight off predators. But as you can see, in this kind of situation, he might poke a couple of holes in him before his head gets ripped off. The idea that carnivores are aggressive and herbivores are passive is a joke. If you go to Africa, the thing that most people are worried about are things like elephants and buffalo. Cape buffalo, in particular, are extraordinarily dangerous animals. Hippos are famously very dangerous. Herbivores are not just peaceful, gentle giants. The situation is obviously a bit weird, but fundamentally, the anatomy of the dinosaurs is great. This is a 9. If it's supposed to be a Giganotosaurus, someone's accidentally copied T-Rex and just given it 3 fingers. That doesn't make it Giganotosaurus. The head shape's completely wrong for that. They're very big and heavy, so they're not going to be that fast. 10, 15 miles an hour, more than fast enough to outrun him. These were basically marathon runners. They're also never going to be able to hide and ambush something over a short distance. They're going to come over the horizon or come out the trees. The prey is going to see them coming and bolt, and they're just going to go and keep going and keep going and keep going. They had adaptations in their feet to basically retain energy with each step and make themselves good for that. The proportions of the various bones down the leg make them good for taking lots of steps with a long stride length. They're not that quick at turning. I think your best bet would be to try and spiral. What I'd want to find is a really big tree or a really big rock formation and just go round.